Now we're going to move to the first panel discussion, or actually pitch session, I should say, on traceability. So I would like to introduce Alejandro Escobar, who is the lead investment and operations officer with the IDB Lab, and he has years of experience in agricultural economics and system analysis. So I will let him introduce the topic for today and the companies that will be pitching. So Alejandro, if you can unmute yourself, there we go, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Thank you again for having me today. Just following through the agenda that was discussed yesterday and hearing Marcos today, it seems like this has been an incredible session of knowledge sharing and learning about blockchain. Again, my name is Alejandro Escobar. I work for the IDB Lab. I have been with the bank for about 15 years, and most of my work has been around agricultural value chains, and agricultural finance. That's my area of work within the bank. And more recently, along with Marcos and some of the other team members, we've been working and exploring initiatives within the traceability arena. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Let me see if I can share my screen very quickly. Great. So if you can just follow with us, we're going to briefly discuss what the IDB Lab has been doing in the space of traceability and blockchain. Just to confirm that you guys are seeing okay the screenshot with the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. So the IDB Lab has three focus areas, or three thematic areas. Climate smart agriculture, which is the area that I am involved with. We also have the area of the knowledge economy and inclusive and innovative cities. So these three areas capture the three different projects themes that we work in. And I would say in climate smart agriculture, a lot of it is working with value chains and farmers, cooperatives, agribusinesses along their value chains, and also in projects around climate change adaptation and mitigation within the agricultural sector. Within the climate smart agricultural theme, we have been exploring agtech as another focus area that has become increasingly important in the region. And I would like to call this particular area, the technology for agriculture for systems transformation, is the area where we house more of the traceability projects. Now, we've done traceability in the past with projects in years prior, some I would say, but more recently with the rise of technology and the use cases that we have seen with blockchain, our traceability projects have taken on a more robust intent on being and using the platforms that are out there to make traceability have even more value to those who are involved in the value chain. Now, we've been able to hear about experiences in North America with some of the large corporates that are implementing blockchain around their value chains. But we've also seen the rise of interest and applicability within the region. And within the IDB Lab, we've been able to work with, I would say, about 4 projects and perhaps a few more that have to do specifically with the theme of agricultural value chains and traceability using blockchain. Now, I gotta say, frankly, I'm not an expert like Marcos, and I'm so glad that Marcos is a part of our team. The support that Marcos and LagChain has been providing to the projects has been instrumental. Now, the projects that we have not necessarily are directly, the main objective of the projects is not necessarily establishing a blockchain for the products, but it is an important part of the whole strategy of the project. So for example, we have 4 projects, one of them in Honduras that has to do with coffee and cocoa. In Peru, we have a coffee traceability and finance program project in Peru. We have a project with the alpaca export company, and in Argentina, a project with honey and traceability. Now, the objectives of these projects are oftentimes perhaps a loan or a grant to support the export markets of these associations or companies or agribusiness. So, and just like Marcos was saying, behind each one of these, there is a concrete company, a concrete association, business that is owning the project and is delivering the project. A couple of these have loans attached to the projects. In other words, the loans are to implement a production capacity, a processing capacity for coffee, and loans for some of the farmers who are part of the value chains of these projects. So there's a strong loan component to this. What we have discovered is that traceability provides a great opportunity to strengthen those value chains in the projects themselves. So in the case of Honduras, we're working with one of the largest export cooperatives of coffee, and they are already in the market. They're exporting about 50 containers a year of specialty coffee, and the work with them is to try to enhance their traceability capacity for bringing origin information from the farmers to the co-ops and to the end users. In the case of Peru, we have a project with the Alpaca Copecan, the largest co-op in Peru that exports, again, significant amounts of alpaca wool into Europe. And they are implementing, at the request, oftentimes from their clients, to provide greater capacity to trace their product all the way to the growers in the field. These are examples. So with these projects, the main problems that we're trying to address have to do with enhanced market access. In other words, the main challenge that these companies and these projects have to do with positioning their products in the markets. Most of the time, these products are already in the market. They're already being exported, but they're seeking to position themselves, their products, in a higher value of the market. So enhanced market access is one of the problems that we try to address. Transparent payment systems. This is something that not all of the projects are looking at, but in the case of coffee in Honduras, we're going to be looking to implement. We're still at the very early stage. We haven't started the project yet, but this is one of the areas that the cooperative in particularly wants to be able to look at, and that is the transparency of the payment systems across the value chain. So farmers, exporters, the processors and exporters, and the buyers can have access to this information. The third area, or the third problem we're trying to solve here, and the issues that perhaps we have experience with, but perhaps are being enhanced with traceability using blockchain, is a more equitable governance within the value chain. And by that, we mean being able to allocate greater value to the farmer, the origin, if you may, and the cooperative perhaps that they represent. So just being able to, with the transparency, with the enhanced market access, bring more equitability into the governance and how decisions are made within value chains. Oftentimes value chains which are very much disaggregated or it's not one company handling the whole supply chain, but where there are several actors participating in the value chain, we want to see more equitability there. And finally, de-risking finance to supply de-risking finance within the supply chain. In other words, we're seeing an increased role of companies. We're seeing an increasing role of companies providing finance to the farmers, and a way to do this in a much more effective way is to have better access to information of the farmers. And we do this by using traceability. So with a more robust system of information, decisions, financial decisions to provide loans and credit down the supply chain to the farmers can be better allocated if there is that information. So these are kind of the 4 areas, the problems that we want to solve with our projects with traceability and the use of blockchain. So finally, what are the key elements that we use that enable us to do this? I would say I've just named 3 here that came to mind as we looked at the projects, and that is these elements are necessary. These elements are necessary for the projects to really happen. One of them is the ability to obtain a unique product at the start of the value chain, right? In this case, I'm giving the example of coffee. So in the case of coffee in Honduras, and in the case of Peru, where we're also dealing with coffee, even though these are large exporters who I would say export 70% of their coffee that is exported is basically a commodity, they have about a 30% allocation of what they export that can be actually traced down back to a micro lot of coffee. So they can buy small lots from specific farmers, and those lots will be able to be identifiable all the way down to the farm. If that did not exist, then this would be very difficult. So that ability is already existing in the value chain of these projects, and that I think is a very important element for us to move. In the case of Peru with alpaca, the same thing. When the alpaca cooperative came to us with the idea of the project for the loan looked very good, but the traceability, we were able to basically confirm that they were able to identify a small lot of wool that is extracted at the farm level, and that was very important. The second element that we see as necessary is the differentiated pricing based on origin and the quality of these lots. So the market is already paying a price differential for these kind of differentiated lots, and I think that is that was another element important. And the third one is that there is an end user ability to pay for the price differential. So not only is there a price differential, but there's also a capacity and interest in doing that. So these are the elements, these are the problems, and these are some of the examples of the projects. Great, I think I'm coming to the time now. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna start to move on to the presentation of the companies. And we're also gonna be looking in the next minutes to hear from the companies, and then also hear from the problem owners. We're going to be using the system to raise our hands after the presentations, if I understand correctly. And so let's quickly now move on to the first company, which I believe is AgriLedger, the first company that's going to be presenting.
Fantastic, Alejandro. Thank you so much. We're just looking at the list of participants that have managed to join. AgriLedger is not there yet, so we suggest to move on to the next presentation from Consensys, because Consensys is on the line. So Consensys, if you can unmute yourself and begin your presentation, that would be great.
Sure. Just give me a second to close some windows, and I can present in 1 second. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so by way of background, my name is Tyler Mulvihill. I'm a co-founder of Trium, and Trium is a company under the Consensys mesh or umbrella that's being incubated by Consensys. So you can think of Consensys as the much larger organization, and Trium as a traceability solution for the Caribbean underneath that Consensys umbrella. And why don't I go ahead? I didn't realize I wasn't sharing my screen. I wasn't sharing my video, so you can all see me as well when I present. Okay, so it's April 9th. This is a presentation For the Latin America and Caribbean region, we want to talk about two things today. It's traceability and transparency, something that is at the ethos and at the DNA level of our company. We're going to talk a little bit about Consensys so you get the relationship, and then about Trium, the key challenges that I think the ecosystem is facing right now, and then Trium's proposed solution, and then finally how we are leveraging blockchain and our expertise to be able to rapidly deploy these solutions in the ecosystem. About us, so Consensys. So I joined Consensys back in 2017 or late 2016. Former management consultant at a Big Four consultancy. But Consensys, what we really are, is the largest pure play blockchain company on the planet. We build infrastructure all the way up to the application layers. We educate the world on blockchain because we think it's a transformational technology. I came from an innovation background, and so I know that there's other solutions out there in the exponential technology world, like AI and machine learning and omnichannel. But I truly believe, and I think most of whom work at Consensys truly believes that blockchain is going to be the coordination layer or the messaging bus of the next generation of how we coordinate. Consensys has some products, assets in finance, in commerce and decentralized finance, and we're primarily built on the Ethereum ecosystem, which has the biggest and most active technical blockchain community in the world. So if you think about where you want to invest your dollars and how you want to build, well, you need builders to build. And so I think we're fostering the biggest ecosystem of developers on the planet. Consensys, again, is the largest pure play blockchain company on the planet. We're pretty much everywhere globally. We have major offices on the major cities around the world, active in Latin America region, North America region, all over Europe, Africa, and Asia. Consensys solutions and advisory practice, which is separate than an incubated company like Trium, does a lot of different things. So we have venture development, use case development, technology development, and token development. So we can build you token platforms. We can build you specific use cases that you're interested in. And we also have venture development opportunities. So we do a lot of things because we realize the ecosystem is young and we have to feed the garden for it to grow. So some of the companies that Consensys has been partnered with or customered with or gone on the journey of new development and innovation discovery include huge government organizations like the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the World Bank, of course, IDB, Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft and AWS, under the umbrella of Amazon, Levi's, the largest consumer packaged goods companies in the world, as well as NGOs like World Wildlife Fund and the work that we did tracking tuna, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So as far as our qualifications, Consensys has worked with and helped educate some of the largest companies and organizations in the world on blockchain. So what are we seeing as some key challenges specifically within the food and agri space? Obviously, product traceability is enormous. We see the current world as a bunch of siloed systems that have a hard time interfacing, let alone get full traceability. A lot of this is based on EDI messaging, one up, one down, and if a chain breaks in the link, a link breaks in the chain, all information is lost. Verifiable certifications is huge. Consumers are demanding more trust than ever and more information than ever. Just making a claim is no longer good enough. Consumers are demanding to see the proof behind that claim. And that's where verifiable certificates come from. Food recalls is obviously a huge issue, especially with foodborne illnesses. I think that we're seeing right now, because of COVID, how impactful globalization has been on the world and how our supply chains are not set up to respond flexibly and agilely to those challenges. Obviously, inventory management is something huge with over 30% of food being wasted, and administrative records, just general, where is the information and what are we seeing? Let me just check the chat box real quick to make sure that my audio is coming through. Okay, 5 minutes left, thank you. So this is key challenges. So what is our proposed solution? So Trium recognized early on back in 2017 that buyers are demanding more granular information about the food that they buy and the clothes that they wear. And sellers can unlock value because of this demand by commanding a premium for their provenance-informed products. Regulators, I mean, this is the holy grail for regulation because you can instantaneously audit supply chains. And marketplaces are emerging. So I would consider blockchain one of those marketplaces. So we realized that there was no product that could bring transparency and verifiable provenance to supply chain, so we built it. Trium does three things really, really well: transparency, traceability, and tradability. And all three of these are core to commerce and decentralized finance. The first one is traceability. So one of our first marquee projects was to trace sustainably caught yellowfin tuna from the beautiful waters of Vanuatu near Fiji to New York to make sushi. So we went deep into that use case and showed the consumer by scanning a QR code exactly when their fish was caught, where it was caught, that it was verified, that there were certifications involved, and that's our traceability product. So it's a no-code platform. It allows anybody to develop a supply chain application as long as they understand how to use a computer. Transparency is a bit different. This is more of a product narrative. This is about the claims that are associated with the proof points that support those claims. So this product allows manufacturers to invite suppliers and their suppliers and their suppliers all to an ecosystem to upload one certification, one test, one inspection, rather than doing it multiple times. And lastly, tradability. This is how we allow companies and organizations to tell their ownership narrative. So this is about how we can mint non-fungible tokens that represent unique, either natively digital or physical assets, along with the RFID tags and the machine learning image recognition that goes along with fingerprinting those. So Trium has a variety of applications that are in production right now. Holy Cow is a cosmetics company where we're bringing trust to consumers by, again, uploading those claims, both product claims and ingredient claims, so the consumers can verify them. The Sacramento Kings is an NBA basketball team. Unfortunately, their season is now on pause, but we were creating game live auctions and tokenizing the jerseys that were game worn, and then shipping those out to the people that won the game live auction. So that's the ownership narrative. Most importantly, probably for this conversation, is Verified Organic, which is one of our partners, where we built an entire organic claims farmer supply chain network. So we understand this. We understand cocoa, we understand honey, we understand agricultural products in general, and not only how to do it on the back end, so everything is captured, but then bringing it to a consumer experience. So we make it very easy. There is massive fraud in the organic market. The current methods of organic certification are one-time versus ongoing. And we realize also that farmers have specific problems. What about the internet? How do you build a queuing system when blockchain is not real time? So we built a very intuitive interface to allow farmers and farm managers and truckers and logistic partners and extractors and processors all to be involved in this supply chain very easily. It's been a very successful mission. I'm going to skip this for now. We have a solution for this problem. And last but not least, Consensys has been working with blockchain since 2018. So we're partners. We understand exactly the clients that could connect us to the ecosystem, and we're excited for the opportunity to do so. So reach out, use me as a resource. If you have additional questions, my name is Tyler Mulvihill. My email is tyler.mulvihill@consensys.net. I think I'm at time. Yeah, so that's it. That's the 10 minutes. Thank you all for having me.
Super, thank you so much. I can see now that the person from AgriLedger has joined, so we should then move to AgriLedger's presentation. Geneviève, are you on the line? We cannot hear you.
Oh, yes, sorry, I was muted, and
okay.
I want video, so I will start my video now also. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay in getting to you. As you can imagine, the new securities were a bit of a challenge for me today. So I'd like to first take the time to say thank you very much to Complete Caribbean for inviting us to this presentation. We are really honored, and we wanted to talk about the AgriLedger's offering and looking at transparency, traceability, and accountability in the global food chain. For what we got from you is a brief which talked about some of the needs around a couple of the value chains, which have to do with cocoa and honey. And we believe that our solution at AgriLedger is one that will meet that need. And we are very excited to be able to share with you a little bit of what we have done and how we look to approach it. So we have built a system on a framework, which is really looking, we are using DLT, so using a permission database with the backend being the R3 Corda blockchain, because we believe that privacy and security are the backbone of what is needed mostly in the food supply chain. So looking at this framework, what we look to do is to work with the various stakeholders in the ecosystem, which start from the farmer, the transportation layers, the manufacturers, the brokers, and also the supermarket, the buyers, and finally the customers. We also believe that the different components that by bringing these different components, we bring in a certain level of differentiation. And the first one being that we also look to work in what is the real world. So what is a communication challenges that may be found in that area? What are the, what is the norms, the community norms that we need to look at? And really, then also the friction that may already exist because it's a different way of looking at the concept. We understand that you have asked us about cocoa and honey. I actually am a Caribbean girl who happens to be living these days on the Great Isle of Jersey in the UK. I was born in Haiti, and I do, we have a big, these are actually pictures from Haiti, and these are also something that is very understandably close to what we need to all participate in and creating the trust that is necessary. So what we understood is like in the being able to have access to market, that's a key necessary step. Also being able to prove that all the certifications such as no chemicals have been used and the honey is pure, and being able to track every step of the way is something that we do. So we have been working in Haiti, and we are about to go live in Haiti with, unfortunately, as you guys will all know, it's been a challenge in the last year for Haiti. First, in September, there was a total lockdown. And now with COVID, there is an opportunity that things may not move as fast. But the thank God about this is that we're doing fresh fruits, which are the mangoes. And as such, because they are being bound for the US and the government has said that fresh fruits and vegetable are staples that need to come through, we're hoping that will give us the opportunity. So I wanted to take you for a minute into our application and show you a bit of what we're doing. So sorry, technical difficulties today. So this is the application actually that we've built for the Haitian solution. And this is a project which is being run in conjunction with the World Bank. And this is about alleviating poverty in the bottom 40%. And if we know anything, 40% bottom is usually going to be the farmers, which are the smallholder farmers. So the concept works with the farmers being able to call, and communication is really what's key with everything here. Is the communication starts with what is a group which is basically working with the farmers to put in new requests, so they can they get to know what's the farmer's name, and we'll say Mr. Losindor. That GPS location comes in, he'll say which fruit he's planning on having and the estimated number of fruit that is going to be delivered. Once we can look at the requests that have come in, and I will take you very quickly to the system to then show what happens when we are at the sorry. I don't know what's happening, but anyway, let's go back here. This is obviously my system is not working with me very well today. But if you don't mind, I will go back and I'm going to stop trying to show the system because I think that I ended up putting myself in a way. So this is the most important thing. One of the other things that we do is we assure to remove the intermediaries in terms of payments. And the way we achieve that is really by assuring throughout the journey that we have a clear understanding of all the players, and using smart contract, we then appropriate based on their work, the amount that has been agreed upon. So if we look at the system right now, we can see that for the sale that happened based on the price, the net sale was 277, and it breaks down to each payment based on the agreement. Each individual will see their section. This information in terms of the total breakdown is only available to the system administrators, which are part of the government of Haiti. Another thing that we do is that we use smart contract to be able to levy accountability across the system. And this is done by being able to look at things such as time delay and temperature. So if there is a breach, that is recorded and the amount is there. This is something that is not taken at the time, but really it's understanding that there's been a cost against. This is reviewed by the government and the individual because there could have been some sort of force majeure, and through that being able to then take them back. Finally, what we do is we not only are working with the different part, but we're also working with the banks, and this allows us to be able to really work on making sure that the farmer receives the cash right away. So I will take you back into the presentation to just complete a little bit. So we have also available Node Explorer. And one of the things that I welcome you, actually I should have gone a little slower. This would be a final, what would be seen by the customer on the QR code on the fruits in the US. And through that, they would be able to see the whole journey of the fruit and what has been the temperatures throughout the journey, and what is, if the supermarket agree, the price which is going to each part of the value chain. It's important to be able to be transparent. So we have also what we are calling a Node Explorer, and also these can be the nodes, can be where the nodes are being kept by each participants themselves. So there will be a node for the service provider, a node for the broker, a node for the farmers. This is some of the information that one would see in there. And also what we're really looking to do is work with others to create standards, because there is a lot of data out there, and it's very important that we create that framework. So when we look at something like cocoa, there are several pieces of data which denotes the quality and also what are like temperature and or humidity that need to be kept. So by creating the standards, creating where this data is, then it allows us to have interoperability, because even though we would love to be the only one doing this, I believe that it is going to be necessary to have several software or providers which are doing the agriculture value chain, and then for us to provide back to the farmers, to the producer, the buyers, and everyone on the value chain information. So it is important, as we create more blockchain solutions, that we create standards. So thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to speaking to some of you once we have gone further down this journey. Thank you.
Genevieve, thank you very much for your presentation. Now we are going to move to the next one. I think that Deloitte is not on the line yet, so therefore we will move to the next one, which is Emerge.
Hi there, Damien Scanlon here from Deloitte.
Oh, okay, great, excellent, Damien. So go ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I'll start sharing my screen. So good afternoon, everyone. As I said, my name is Damien Scanlon. I'm a manager in Deloitte here in Ireland. I'm based out of our EMEA blockchain lab, one of our 3 centers of excellence for blockchain globally. I personally am the product owner for our track and trace assets across the Deloitte network here in the EMEA region. So mindful of time, what I would propose to take you through today is our hot off the press brochure for our track and trace asset. There's quite a bit of detail in this, so I'm going to call out the highlights to you, but what I will do is make it available after the call so that you can peruse it at your own leisure. I'll also speak to you briefly around some of the partnerships that we've put in place to overcome some of the challenges we have, what differentiates Deloitte and our multidisciplinary approach, and then not included in this document, but I can speak to some of our experience, keeping in mind client confidentiality. So our track and trace assets extends right across supply chains from pharmaceutical to automotive, but most importantly for the purpose of this call, agri-food. So what is track and trace in a Deloitte context? So this is our technology solution powered by blockchain. So at Deloitte, we're blockchain agnostic. We build our platforms on Ethereum, Hyperledger Fabric, VeChain, and other suitable platforms based on the requirements of our clients and their security and privacy preferences. Track and trace itself has been built on Hyperledger Fabric, but as I say, the firm itself is platform agnostic, and we can work with our partners to determine the best platform for their needs. Track and trace is one of its applications, as I say, is in the agri-food sector, and I suppose we break down our focus into 3 core areas. So we look at it from sourcing, production, and traceability perspective to farm performance and also sustainability. So as I was looking at the challenge presented, really what came true for me was for the honey and the cocoa examples, I believe our platform is hitting some of the key points. So specifically, if we look at sourcing, so a big challenge can be around the lack of information or the lack of transparency with regard to the origin of a product. What track and trace does in a Deloitte context is it provides organizations and farmers the ability to capture data upstream in the value chain. That data of on-farm information that has previously eluded organizations as they try to create control and transparency around their supply chain. What it allows us to do is it puts in place that robustness so that downstream processes have greater visibility of the quality of the product that they're receiving and the quantities also. It ensures that raw materials are produced in compliance with the firm's production policies. So specifically, we've worked with organizations in illicit trade, and it's really important that the producers of those raw materials ensure that they're compliant with the legislative standards, but also the import and compliance, as well as port health standards as well. One thing that we felt at Deloitte often gets overlooked is the need for the farmer to reap reward from the solutions that are implemented. I would completely agree that consumers have increased demand and need for visibility of where their foodstuffs and their consumables come from. But also, we cannot forget that the farmer must benefit from these solutions also. And what we've looked to do is to start providing data back to farmers. So not only capture the information about what they're producing and how much they could possibly receive for it, but actually, how could they produce that crop in a more efficient manner? How could their processes be improved so that the product becomes more efficient and that they reduce cost? Apologies. let me just. Also, a big focus at the moment is on sustainability and the sustainability of our environment and our ecosystem. And this really came through in the challenge presented. What we look to do is take the information from the raw material producer, marry that together with existing information from ERP systems and other available production systems, and start layering in environmental and ecological information on top of that. Publicly available information such as the weather, the climate, for a specific region, what's the temperature today, what's the soil pH for that region, and what should the farmer be doing to make sure that they improve their yield, they take care of the local ecology, and ultimately they benefit in the near term with increased profit, but in the longer term by protecting their environment. So that's some of our functionality and the features associated with it. As I say, we've more information that I will make available. Before I end, one of the points that I think is really important, in our extensive work with organizations implementing these systems, in products such as coca and honey, batching is always found to be a challenge. How do we ensure that the final product can be traced if, for example, honey is being pooled into a collective to then be jarred? What Deloitte has done is it has partnered with an organization who can scientifically prove the origin of materials. And we're working in developing markets with this organization and our risk advisory colleagues to define those standards. I think one thing, as I said at the start, that really differentiates Deloitte is our multidisciplinary approach and our ability to bring our assurance, our risk advisory, and our technology capability to bear. We've done this, as I say, in pharmaceutical and automotive, but we've also worked with dairy organizations, we've worked in meat traceability and other agri-food products. Both myself and my colleague Roger would be most happy to continue this conversation and provide more specifics around our work in a smaller forum. Thank you very much for the time.
Thanks very much. Basically, we will now go on to the next presentation, which is from Emerge.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly fine.
So I'm just gonna share my screen right now and press play. So good morning, everyone. Similar to yesterday and in the spirit of knowledge sharing, I think I'm going to focus the presentation more on some of the lessons that we've learned through our implementations, as well as some of the key issues that are arising both before we do our implementation and then after, where we identify some areas for potential improvement along the supply chain. And also our lessons in really democratizing access to these kinds of solutions for all food producers. So before that, a little bit about Emerge. We are a humanitarian solutions development lab. We focus on leveraging innovation and innovative new technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, IoT, et cetera, and apply them toward humanitarian applications aligned with the UN SDGs. So our work has spanned different verticals, including digital identification for displaced populations, financial inclusion for inconsistent income earners, of which here we focused on a particular target of farmers and managing risk for their inconsistent income earning. We've also done work in supply chain operations and optimization and digital bill of lading and intellectual property and so on. And so in the wake of COVID, we've also been working 24/7 to adjust some of our solutions to make sure that they can be of service during this time, which I'm going to also apply to this conversation toward the end. And then our preferred blockchain partner at the moment is Penta, and we've also been testing or will be testing the blockchain ecosystem quite soon. next week, as early as next week. And for local implementation in the Caribbean, we also work quite closely with PACME. So some of the pressing issues I think have already been discussed quite a bit in terms of, high and unnecessary costs, not just on the front of like what inefficiency within a supply chain can cost, but also sometimes even often accessing these kinds of solutions for small farmers becomes quite unfeasible unless they have grant-based support from larger organizations. And so for us, it was equally important to manage costs within the inefficiencies of a supply chain, but also to ensure that farmers had access to more buying power and more selling power, and also that they had access to solutions that were not that costly for them. Obviously, we also know that there have been quite a number of recalls this year, and that the impact on health and safety is a priority for organizations around the world. That waste is quite excessive. Namely, we throw out about 1/3 of the total food that we produce around the world. The fact that there is this lack of consumer trust in relation to certifications and in relation to the health and safety of their food. And then, of course, that supply chain is among the most fragmented ecosystems in the world. And lastly, we have noticed that there's quite inconsistent data integrity, as everything is quite siloed, and also there's limited incentive to knowledge share. So these were the sort of priorities that we had in mind when it came to when it came to what we wanted to build. And some of the data that we were able to research before even deploying our first product was about the new consumer, and this millennial consumer that really cares about the ways that they're sourcing their ingredients and their products. And so we learned that they do value transparency when it comes to certain components of their food and the origin of their food. However, we definitely learned that they didn't want to be overwhelmed with information. So for us, it was really important to distinguish between, does a consumer really need to know that the temperature of their, lettuce was 12 degrees or less every 5 minutes, or do they just need to know and trust that this container was managed responsibly the entire time? And so finding these balances between what consumers really want to know, how much is made visible to them in ways that are friendly to them, and then for those that do want to dive in deeper, that opportunity to do so. I think that balance has been a lesson that we're applying constantly when it comes to our implementations. The features of our solution are really related to end-to-end traceability, and for this we also have options in terms of how much visibility wants to be attained. And so we have options where QR codes are inexpensive. We have RFID chips, but we've also began testing custom-made IoT smart sensors. So we are able to monitor additional data points, such as light positioning of a container, to ensure there's been zero interruption to that container along its international route. We are able to look at things like motion and tamper-proofing things. We are also able to correlate interesting data points. So for example, if there is an instance where light positioning has changed, temperature has changed, and GPS location indicates that the container is en route through on an ocean, then there should be no changes in light positioning, and that might mean that the container has been opened when it shouldn't have been. And so correlating this data becomes a lot more interesting for us. Additionally, and as others have mentioned, the importance of certifying origin and authenticating a lot of the processes and things about the product itself, and then providing these in forms of digital documents and certifications. So this is some pictures from an implementation that started in Colombia. We were tracing coffee all the way to Canada across 5 jurisdictions, and we're trying to preserve near real-time visibility into the supply chain. And we were using autonomous and passive data loggers to make sure that we preserved that near real-time visibility, even when there were disconnected moments and there was no cellular and no Wi-Fi. We still had instances of data collection. And some of the lessons that we learned were that we are actually able to also tie geospatial temporal location data to commodity pricing in real time, which means this might have a really massive implication in the ways that pricing dynamics affect a shipment that is ongoing and what kind of negotiating power buyers and sellers have as a shipment is still en route. We have worked with apples, coffee, cocoa, and rice, and a couple of other different products, and we're now looking into cannabis as well. And so one of the lessons that you learned when implementing for a Fortune 500 company was, yes, IoT devices, and yes, there was this opportunity to really build a competitive edge. But in our next iteration, we really wanted to make sure that we focused on small farmers. And so to that end, our work in cocoa is actually done directly with an indigenous community in Central America. And we played with our pricing dynamics in order to make it extremely affordable for them to use the solution. We played with our user interface and also the experience that customers were having to turn their luxury product and increase the price by quite a large margin. And so within the pricing dynamics, we were also able to contribute back to the community in a better way. And we supported some of their community-driven goals by creating a fund so that some of the profit that was increased due to the change in transparency availability for consumers was directed at improvements for the community at large rather than at individual salaries. And that was at their own request. Additionally, we were able to ensure that all of the technology followed proper cultural context and was blessed before use. And we have been working to reduce the time it takes to create a new batch and to track a shipment, and to make sure that everyone can use the platform regardless of levels and degrees of education. And so to that end, we've managed to reduce the time it takes to create a batch to under 2 minutes. And, oops, sorry, I think I'm running out of time, but so just in the wake of COVID, we really wanted to make sure that we could apply the same lessons that we've learned to some of the medical challenges that we're seeing in relation to counterfeit medication and interruptions to supply chain by black market, to the huge spikes of demand and to a lot of the pressures that different supply chains are experiencing, especially in the biopharmaceutical sector. And so, so I think that, at this point in time, it's really important that everyone in this conversation, on this panel presenting, sort of take into consideration some of the key pressure points, and also make sure that we are adequately applying some of the lessons that we've learned in food to medication, especially when a vaccine becomes available. But I'm happy to answer any kinds of questions in relation to some of the projects that we've done specifically with excluded populations. And where we're headed next is that we're really focused on digital bills of lading, and also to make sure that we can democratize as much as we can about the process to make it really, really cheap, even really, really cheap for even indigenous communities or otherwise excluded populations and cooperatives to be able to afford the technology. That's been our priority, and that's sort of I think where we're still going to continue to head forward as we move into new markets and set up new partnerships and adaptations of the solution. So with that, I will leave it to questions. We can be contacted by email, and I'll be available online today as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Licia. This is excellent. Now we are going to move to the next presentation already. The presentation is from Farm Credibly from Varun. And Licia will ask you to stop sharing your screen. And Varun, if you can unmute yourself and begin your presentation.
Sure, yeah, let me unmute. And
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So let me share my screen. Please let me know if you're seeing it. Yeah, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Varun Baker. I'm the CEO of Farm Credibly. We're a technology startup that's focused on access to finance in agriculture. So we're based in Jamaica, in Kingston, Jamaica, and our solutioning is all about the use of blockchain technology, and traceability is built into how we are working with supply chains. So I'd like to get into a little bit about what we do, but then also about specifics to this project, because there are a lot of great stakeholders present here. So the challenge we are actually approaching is around credit in agriculture. And because it's difficult for banks to understand who is who in terms of who is a productive farmer who would be more productive with access to capital, we are using data to build a profile on the farmers. So seeds and fertilizer that the farmer uses, as well as persons they make sales to, are things that count towards the person's profile. And as you can tell, all this data comes from the supply chain, and having a single point of truth is extremely useful in all this. And that's the role of blockchain in all of this. So here's an example of one of our farmer profiles, and there are the logos there of a couple stakeholders who they work with in their supply chain. So the main point I think that I also made yesterday is that the value we see in blockchain was most eloquently put by a Jamaican songwriter who said, you can fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And what does that mean for traceability? Well, as we heard about for food safety or for other reasons, for example, consumers wanting to understand and trust the source and origin of our foods, this system creates a very beneficial way to manage this data. So I'd like to move past that and into the scope of this specific project, because I think it's really uniquely positioned to add a lot of value, not just in Trinidad and in the markets that it touches, but across agriculture in the Caribbean and in the world in general. So the very nice thing is that the Cocoa Research Center is on board from the beginning and already has techniques in-house to manage the quality of cocoa, down to even genomics and specific gene research that can identify particular varieties of cocoa, as well as the Fine Cocoa Company, who actually has access to markets. So, preservation of quality is important, but also preservation of markets, and the two are related. And the amazing thing here is that the stakeholders that have a group of beekeepers allow us to apply whatever techniques and tools that we're building, make sure that it applies to a more broader set of commodities. And what's central in all of this is intellectual property. So from the general ideas that we've talked about, that we think of around copyrights and trademarks with intellectual property, specific to agriculture, we have to start thinking about plant breeders' rights. And I'm really interested in understanding more about the traditional knowledge that exists, as well as the research that's specifically being done at UWI that would feed into capturing the full kind of traceability of products that end up in the markets. So here are a few of the partners we work with, and the one I really want to highlight here is DLT Labs, because they are a massive blockchain company out of Canada who I would say has the world's largest full production blockchain solution out there. They work with Walmart, understand supply chains really well, and have worked in emerging economies. For instance, they've done a blockchain solution around cobalt and precious minerals like gold and diamonds. And the idea is to provide conflict-free cobalt. So I would really encourage exploring the use of their technology and platforms, because it's already built. They have, user manuals already in place for all of this. So it's more a matter of configuring these things to our needs than it is about solving the problems of the technology itself. The problems I'd like to solve are around the markets and the intellectual property we're providing, and providing value at this level in agriculture. So it's more about discovering our problems, and I would spend a lot of time doing requirements gathering amongst the stakeholders to build something that's really scalable across our region. So I look forward to the Q&A when we can hopefully discuss some more of that. And thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Varun. Again, another super presentation. Now we will move on to the next one. I can see, well, I would like to know if someone from AgriLedger is in the room,
yes,
available to start. Okay, excellent. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen as well. Right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it. But if, maybe to put it in, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Perfect.
If you can turn on your video also, it's great to see you speaking if possible.
So yeah, so it is on. I'll turn it back on and after we do this then.
Okay,
I guess
great.
my video, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, will do. Hi everybody, good morning. So I'm the founder of AgriLedger and co-CEO. And so it's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to network virtually with you. And so I'm looking forward to the session where we ask questions. And I hope we'll have a chance one day to meet in person. So I structured our presentation in 4 pieces to say, well, who are we, where we've been, what is our traceability solution, and within the context of the scope of this competition, just to show the art of the possible and where we put some focus. So who are we? We're a strong team in business and blockchain, and you'll notice the older faces as well. So in our team, we've got experienced cryptographers, people with workflow expertise, supply chain, sustainability, and payments. So I don't want to spend too much time on us. We're happy to tell you more afterwards. So I thought we'd move straight into where we've been. And so we've created a complete track and trace solution with a focus on how government regulators can participate to support the competitiveness of the food industry. And so we've worked in Canada with, for example, our Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And we did track from field to plate. We did something special with them with respect to enabling participants in the network, in the Mimosi blockchain supplier network, to apply for the inspection agency's license straight off. And of course, we were showing how rapidly we could do food recalls and how comprehensively we can do it as well. We are in production in the gold industry. So basically our solution can be used for traceability of materials other than food. And it can be used for a bunch of different materials, not just gold, but we've worked in steel as well, and the sky's the limit as to what kind of material we can track. And so what you're seeing here on the screen is where someone can scan one of the products that's come out of PAMP. So PAMP is one of the largest Swiss gold refiners in the world, and they make a very popular mini gold bar that's called the Lady Fortuna, and that's what you're seeing, a customer scanning the bar, and basically what's showing up is the authenticity of the bar and the provenance of the gold that came that goes into the bars. And in this case, we know it came from Ghana, and the handling of it all the way through. So in this graphic, and so I'm going to bring your attention to this graphic here, we can drill down, you can click on the boxes, and we can expand, for example, process information. There could be marketing information. If you click on the edges, their modals come up and you get more information about the transaction and so forth. And so this is something that we can take across all materials, including food, and we have done so. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So we already have a SaaS system, and so in it, we can enable customers to track and trace. So here's some of the business capabilities that you get. So you can track and trace supply chains in seconds. You can visualize provenance and sustainability information in seconds. You can act to manage risk, example, counterfeiting. And so just like Varun just said about the cocoa research that's happening in UE, where they've got the the authentication technologies, we can incorporate that in our system. We do track at a physical as well as document level, so IoT devices, QR codes, RFID, what have you, they're all incorporated. In addition to that, we enable on our platform the managing of accountability and sustainability and compliance documents. You can retrieve audit information in seconds. So just like you know, Walmart traced the mangoes in 7 seconds versus weeks, the same thing can happen at an audit level in our system. And so we show the multi-sidedness of the transactions. And in addition to that, we've layered multiple use cases on top of our traceability platforms that depend on traceability, so that you would get the incentive of logistics providers and the border agencies to participate in the traceability chain. And the last piece of value that we provide is around giving visibility to particularly the downstream end users, the customers who want to have an idea that they've de-risked their chain, they've de-risked their procurement, and the materials that they're actually selling to the consumers are authentic or have a great provenance history in terms of sustainability. So the other aspect, of course, is that with our solution, we're directly connecting collaborators. And so you get very webby, just like in the days of electronic commerce 20 years ago, where we were talking about doing extranets. And today I say blockchain is like the extranet done right. And so, as Varun talked about the scope of this particular project as well, where we're seeing, well, what is it that maybe the Harrods customer would like to see? And so part of our solution, of course, would be to enable them to see the sustainability aspects and to see the authenticity of their materials. And so actually having the Cocoa Research Center with their capabilities and their testing and certification in the loop and carrying that information to the end product's valuable. And so I sort of here made up a product called a honey chocolate bar, just to put the two groups who are interested in the traceability work, which is the fine cocoa company and BrassoSecoMorne Croix Farmers Association. And so I know that the BrassoSecoMorne Croix, they have a product called Honey Seco. So I kind of made this up, right, in terms of well, we know that the cocoa beans will come from the TNT cocoa farms, and then we can it'll go to processors and you'll roast it and so forth. And so we can track and trace all that transformation through there as well, to where it may go to cocoa liquor. And it could be that all of this process, this process here, this black one and this one is in one. I separated it just to show again, in our made up product of a honey bar, that there is some input from Honey Seco and also from this line here, and that we can track all of that. And then when you make the chocolate bar, if there's a distributor in between, we can show that too. If they were logistics providers, we could show that too, and then on to the retailer, right? So before I go on to show you, how we show visibility, the other thing is that in our system too, we do have a partnership with a global payments provider to support our smart contract governed payment automation. And so this payment automation take different forms, and here's where we would do some customization for our separate clients. So as I mentioned before, our solution is cloud hosted for participant convenience and usability. And we've actually created a very flexible design. So we've worked with Hyperledger Fabric as the backend. We've also worked with another company that has a very high performance backend system.
You have 1 minute left.
Yeah,
sorry, please wrap up.
Thank you. And so it is possible for us to use blockchain. And so this is my final slide. And here is just showing you the art of the possible. Imagine someone in Harrods, and let's pretend this is the honey bar again. you added a little bit of QR code there. They come with their phone, Android, iPhone, whatever, and they're scanning it, and they can see something like this. They can click on it, and they can get, you know, a little marketing story of the provenance. And so, thank you very much for listening, and I hope to continue our conversations.
Super, thank you very much. That was also super interesting. And now we are already going to the next presentation. I think we have PricewaterhouseCoopers on the line. So PwC, if you can unmute yourself, show your camera, turn on your camera and start your presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Sanjay Rao. I'm part of the PwC Jamaica team here, and I work with the Caribbean wider team of PwC for all the digital initiatives. So with respect to blockchain, we have multiple implementations with a lot of POCs which we have done across the world. So today, with the paucity of time, we are with the PwC India team. So they are going to present about a solution which we have live in India with respect to the export of pomegranates from India to Europe. So over to you, Aditi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm from PwC India. My name is Aditi, and I'll be walking you through the solution we have in place for the supply chain of cocoa and honey. Let me start with what our understanding of the problem statement is. So what we're trying to do is to develop an end-to-end traceability system, which will provide a proof of origin as well as ensure compliance to international food standards. So the challenge this is going to address is the ability to authenticate the product origin. And the fact that information is stored in silos also means that there's a limited visibility across the supply chain. We're also going to ensure that whatever pesticides or residues have been used, any testing which has taken place is validated and authentic certificates are kept in our system. And the result of this will be to improve the marketability of premium cocoa. And also, if there's any related intellectual property or geographical indicator associated with the plantation, the end user will be able to view that. Now, our problem statement for honey is twofold. Firstly, it is to ensure that the honey within Trinidad and Tobago is locally sourced, locally procured. And secondly, we also want to boost the export of honey and honey-related produce. Let me just see if I can close this. Yeah. Then the objective is to preserve the ecological impact of the industry by ensuring that the chemicals and pesticides inside the hives which are used for treatment of diseases are very limited. And yeah. So how are we going to solve this problem? Let me walk you through the solution that we have come up in place to solve this problem. Now, our proposed solution for blockchain solution for the traceability and provenance of cocoa, we have come up with a sort of bean-to-bar solution, wherein we have all our important stakeholders on our distributed ledger. These stakeholders will include our cocoa farmers or growers. What our system will do is we'll register these farmers as well as the plantation details. So we'll have the details of the farmers as well as the area of the plantation, the location of the plantation, and their production capacity. Then we have the agencies who have set up the norms and standards the cocoa must be compliant with, for example, the level of cadmium that is acceptable, as well as the chemical labs which are testing this level of cadmium or any other chemicals which are necessary. They'll upload the test results directly into the system. Then we have the agencies who are responsible for issuing intellectual property and geographical indicators who will directly upload the necessary certificates into our system. Then the processing plants take the raw cocoa and convert them into processed products, which could be cocoa butter, cocoa liquor, or even cocoa powder. And these are then packaged into boxes, which will be RFID tagged. This RFID could be a QR code. And using this QR code, any user will be able to check the provenance of the cocoa bean. And our exporters will also be a part of the system. They'll be uploading all the ordered and invoice related information. And our logistics and transportation providers who are part of the supply chain throughout and are very important, will be able to track the GPS of any vehicles which have been moving from the farm to the processing plants, from the exporter to the warehouse, etc. And our device will have IoT to check the humidity, the temperature, and any other parameters during transportation. So at any time when it goes below the acceptable level, our system will release a trigger and ensure a sequence of events so that that particular package is not allowed to proceed into our system. We'll also include monitoring agencies, like the Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa Company. They can ensure compliance and they can view any analytics, reports, and dashboards in our system. And finally, our importers or our end consumers. These importers could be companies like Nestle or any other companies who are part of this partnership. All they have to do is scan the QR code, and then that will give them information such as the cocoa harvest details, the date it was harvested, the plantation from where it was harvested. Okay. And whether any chemical residue test was conducted. And if it was conducted, they can download the certificate as well. And if there's a geographical indicator or an IP associated with that plantation, this certificate will directly be uploaded by the concerned agency. Our importer can also see when it was processed by the TT Fine Cocoa Company and when it was shipped from Trinidad and Tobago and when it was received in the importing country. Yeah. Sorry. Our solution for honey is similar. The major differences are we are also introducing local wholesalers and retailers into our system because the objective is to ensure that the honey produced in Trinidad and Tobago, it's only that honey is within the local market and not some other imported honey. So local wholesalers and retailers will be able to authenticate that the product they received has been locally sourced. We also have apiaries and beekeepers associations who will be registered into our system. And when the end user might be a citizen living in Trinidad and Tobago who's buying, say, a jar of honey, or it could be an importer. They can take a jar of honey and they can scan the QR code and they'll be able to see the date it was collected from an apiary and when a residue test was conducted. Again, similar to cocoa, they'll be able to download any associated certificates. Now, what is the benefit of our solution? Firstly, we're enhancing the market value of your cocoa and your honey. This will in turn boost the local economy. Now, the farmers, the cocoa growers who've been growing high-end cocoa will finally be able to demand a premium for the produce because they can authenticate the proof of origin. And even our beekeepers' livelihood and is not at stake because the system ensures that only locally produced honey and honey-related derivatives and products is within the market. Our system also provides a real-time visibility of all the information in the supply chain. It could be the level of stock. It could be where the shipment is at a particular time. So any inefficiencies due to delayed information is resolved. And finally, this will enhance customer trust and satisfaction. You can in turn demand a premium from your end users because you're providing a proof of origin and proof of you're providing authentication of your produce. Now, let me talk about our PwC track and trace solution. Our solution is already made. It's ready to use. It's very customizable depending on the requirements. So we'll only need to study your requirements and our system can cater to those. We also have mobile-based and web-based applications, and our system can easily be integrated with any existing ERP systems as well as IoT devices, although we provide the IoT devices to check the parameters like temperature, humidity, etc. And we can automate a lot of your processes, such as payments, using smart contracts, which means when an importer receives a shipment, he just has to enter into the system that he has received the shipment, and a series of payments will be automatically sent to the exporter, to the logistics provider, right till the farmer. We have a few sample screens developed just to give you a flavor of what it would be like to use the application. So let's say the end user scans the bar of chocolate that he or she has, and they are taken to a page which gives them information of why this is, what's so great, what's so premium, and what's so good about the cocoa which is being used in the chocolate. And this is a great marketing tool for marketing your Trinidad and Tobago's cocoa. They can also see the journey the cocoa has taken right from the country where it was harvested to the country it has been imported in. and they'll be able to view a lot of shipment-related information, such as the temperature, the use of cadmium, the level of cadmium, and whether the seal has been tampered during the course of the shipment. Okay. And we also provide, our application can also provide dashboards as well as reports to any agencies, monitoring agencies. It could be the Ministry of Agriculture, it could be any company who wants to see what were the level of rejections, how many shipments were on time, how many were delayed, and how many were, you can also see which are the best performing regions within Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to, say, export of cocoa or, you know, production of honey. So this analytics is very helpful. And yeah, we have actually already deployed this solution in 2 of our marquee engagements are, you know, one with the government of India, the government of Maharashtra, where we had a track and trace mechanism for the export of pomegranate from India to the European Union. And before our system was in place, they were facing a lot of issues.
Presenter, your time is up.
All right. Okay. Well, we're open to any questions if you have.
Yes, thank you so much, Aditi. That was a great presentation. We have no longer no more presentations, so actually we will move to the Q&A session. So I will ask our moderator, Alejandro, to facilitate this process.